Steve Kerr is officially the highest paid coach in the NBA, signing a 2-year, $35 million extension. Was this announced Friday? I had realized I hadn't spoken on this on the channel. I had done a live stream on Patreon Sunday, and I opened up with my takes on this. Um, Let me read you his coaching resume. Four-time NBA champion, a streak of 5 consecutive NBA Finals appearances, the NBA's single season mark for wins, the NBA's best single season playoff record, the coach of the year, and the winningest season in franchise history. That doesn't even touch on his playing resume, right? But yet, somehow, half of the fan base thinks he's incompetent, right? And you're going to hear people say, well, he's had Steph Curry, right? He had Kevin Durant. Mark Jackson laid the foundation. Um, yeah, timing is everything, as they say, right? And there was certainly some great timing. And we know that basketball is a talent-driven sport. It's a player-driven sport. This isn't football, right? This isn't football. So, yes, there is that. But I do think the Warriors, when this dynasty started, right, they had first movers advantage. They figured out positionless small ball sooner. Really not even figured out. They started it, right? And I think Kerr deserves credit for that. But, when you are the pioneer of something, right? A lot of the times you have a hard time adapting eventually, right? Look how much success we've had. Why would we change it? And you see that with pioneers, and they become victims of their own success. And I think we've seen some of that with this organization and Steve Kerr's lack of adaptability, particularly in the last 2 years. And I'm not going to lie, that's been my gripe with him. And it gotten to a point this season where I was like, yo, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. I can't. In the past, I had always been like, okay, well, I don't agree with that decision, but I understand why that rotation was made or what he was thinking. And there's been scenarios here this season where it was like, yo, I can't even start to explain why he made that decision. And that was really, I think, my biggest concern was, is he just a lame duck coach? Does Steve have no plans of returning beyond this year? And so he really doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's just going to ride with the guys that got him there, regardless of the results. And, like lame duck coaches, it never works out, right? And so I do feel better about the fact that, okay, he's no longer a lame duck coach. He's 2 more years. He can't just be acting in the now and riding with what happened in the past. At the same time, I'm also relieved he didn't get some Monty Williams length deal well beyond Steph, right? Where it was like, oh boy. Because the truth of the matter is, coaches, just like players, there's strengths and weaknesses. There's different types of coaches. And Steve Kerr was brought in at the right time to get the Warriors over the top. And he's been great at managing egos, star players, and keeping this together. I don't know how much credit you give Kerr for building it, but you got to give him credit for keeping it together and getting to 5 finals and 4 championships. But is Steve Kerr a development coach, a guy that can bring the best out of young players and develop a team from scratch? That's a different style of coach that Kerr will probably never be. And you've heard me probably refer to it before, a coachy coach. And what I mean by that, as silly as it sounds, is a guy that came up from grassroots. Like, go listen to Nick Nurse's story he's done plenty of podcasts, and the journey he took to get to coaching in the NBA. He was coaching in third world countries for no money, right? And the guys that work their way all the way up, there's certain things that they learn that these player turned coaches just will never have in their bag. Just like those guys will never have the cachet and the clout of these guys that played in the league, right? So there's a give and take there. And Kerr, look, he may never be a development coach, and so yeah, you don't want to give him no 5-year extension. You tie it to Steph Curry; they're joined at the hip. And I do want to point this out because this is part of a coach's job. Like, Kerr's going to wear a lot of the blame when it comes to decision making, as he should. But let's not act like behind the scenes, Steph has been right alongside him with a lot of these decisions that some of you may not have liked. And I'll point to the Wiseman scenario, right? Where everyone was like, dude, why isn't he playing? They're ruining him, this and that. If you read between the lines, it sounds like Steph, Dre, the vets were like, dude, he can't play. Like they figured it out way quicker than we did. We saw it day to day. He didn't want him out there either, is my point. And so I think that sometimes we focus too much like, oh, Kerr's decision. You're kidding yourself if you don't think that Steph isn't advised on all of these decisions pretty much, right? And I know some of the pushback will say, well, Steph's too nice. Maybe he doesn't say anything. Maybe, I'm just suggesting this. I'm suggesting this. And so even if you consider this season lost because of how many bad decisions have been made in the first half of this season, I personally feel more comfortable that he doesn't have one foot out the door and he can't just go nuclear here at the end of the season because he's leaving and he doesn't care. I think it was a perfect balance as far as the extension and how many years it was. But yeah, he may never be a development coach, right? That these are things that you have to learn these skills. And think about Kerr's first year as head coach. They won the championship. He's never had the opportunity to learn how to develop young players because it's been championship or bust the entire run. And I'm not making excuses. I'm making statements. That's what it is and what it was. But again, these young guys in the development of them, it's not just on Steve. It's on Steph, Draymond, and Clay as well, I guess is my point. And I had said this in the live stream. Look, the Kuminga thing, right? That was the biggest one. We can talk about Moody here in a second if you want to, but the way they've slow rolled Kuminga was frustrating to everyone. There's no doubt about it, but you look at him now and the way he's playing, and I love the habits that they forced him into. And initially, to me, it seemed like, okay, Kuminga, one-track minded scorer. He's going to be a guy that you give the ball, he's a scorer. And perhaps, giving him tough love and slow rolling this process, you're seeing you have to maybe give some credit to them for rounding out his game because he's becoming a much more complete player than I thought he might be. And he's looking like a playmaker. He's rebounding. He's creating shots for others. Just the little things, right, that he wasn't doing. And that's what they were telling him. Like, you can't play unless you do the little things. And it's so important in the first 2-3 seasons of a player's career where, yeah, listen, if Kuminga was in Orlando or in Houston with Jalen Green, we're going to see this Wizards team tonight. These bad habits are formed the first couple years in the league, and then that's kind of what that player becomes. It's very hard to get rid of those habits. And so as frustrating as it's been to watch this slow process with Kuminga, I think that they have, it's like, what do you say, a kid, it's so important those first couple years of what the kid's personality is going to be, right? And they've made sure that Kuminga is going to be, he values the little things. And I think when we look back at this first few years, we're going to be like, dang, man, they molded him, and they helped mold him into a complete player. So I don't think it's been all bad, as frustrating as it is. Now, the Moses Moody situation, I had said this before, sometimes like you can make excuses and you can say these things, but we're all going to have built-in biases. And sometimes it's unconscious, right? For whatever reason, you like this guy, you don't like you may not even realize it, but we've heard these excuses of him being out of the loop, or there's too many guys that play for whatever reason. When there's a moment in a game and it's like, hey, you look down the bench, like who it's not Moody. It's not Moody, and it's just been a very frustrating thing. And he plays bigger than he is, and so if you went, yeah, I don't know. I know they're running the Trace Dario lineups right now, and I'm glad to see Trace out there more. The Looney thing. You heard Tim Kawakami all but say, hey, they're probably going to move off Looney. And he's really had, I don't want to say his career is over, but he's had a tremendous career, all things considering, up to this point. But there's a shelf life for everything. And you consider the injuries he's battled, and then this Iron Man thing that he embraced may have cost him ultimately. But my point is if you really wanted to find a spot for Moody to get some minutes, you could. And so there is that. There's all coaches are going to have favorites though. I know Warrior fans, we feel like I can't believe this, but if you go and pay attention to these other teams and dip into some of their Twitter feeds and fan bases, they're having the same conversation. So like, all right, this is a universal thing. There's going to be favorites and guys that just aren't getting opportunity. But I just hope that now that he's extended for 2 more years, maybe he can lean a little more into the youth and he can start to adapt because, yeah, we were the pioneers of small ball and positionless basketball. You can't just stay that way. Now everybody plays that way. There's no longer that advantage. And, again, everything has a shelf life. The vets, you're holding on to past glories. I think he's got to embrace the young guys in these 2 years moving forward because he's going to have no choice, right? But let me know how you guys feel. I know a lot of you are going to be upset and you wanted him out this summer. But again, Steph wasn't having it. Steph wasn't having it. And 2 years, I think, is a perfect middle ground. 2 more years at this Steph Curry window. And the hope is with Kuminga taking that step and him seeing, some of it is seeing it, right? He's seeing how these young guys can contribute. You got to show me. I think he's too competitive enough and he's too smart to ignore what's taking place, even if it's taken a little long for him to recognize that. So I'm good with the Kerr extension, despite my doubts and my frustrations with him. The resume speaks for itself. And I think most of us understand the reluctance to move on from the past and what they've been doing because they've had so much success. Now, we've got an interesting game tonight, right? Jordan Poole and Draymond Green's first game against each other. How do you think that is Draymond going to try to like give him a hug and Poole's going to be like, get off me? Like, what is that going to look like? Or just kind of like a little fist bump, but not really making eye contact? That would be my odds on it, right? But Poole doesn't even start. They're not even going to have that jump ball thing, right? So I don't know, but underdog fantasy, my pick, I'm waiting on the Poole numbers because I want to take something on his maybe higher turnovers. I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but I want to see what his point total is coming off the bench. But I like Steph higher than 4.5 threes. One, because the Wizards play no defense, and two, he's due, right? He's had 3 or 4 kind of stinker games. If you want to talk about the law of averages, I think Steph may uncork a 3-point barrage in DC tonight. And then I do like Kuminga's higher. I think he's at 16.5, the last number I saw, because maybe I'm hoping, maybe I'm being optimistic. You feel like there might be some garbage time at the end of this one where the young guys can close this one out. At least that's my hope. So I like his numbers, but I'm waiting on a Poole stat line to see what I can get. But those are my picks. Underdog Fantasy. You can join me and use the code Alchemy. You'll get a 100% bonus on your first $100 deposit. And as always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.